Some of the items I've already touched base with you guys, right, when I was doing the cadence part of it, right? And I'll walk you through some of this a little bit, maybe, a little bit more in detail. I know we are running out of time. Kanban board, resource capacity model sheet. I'll show you what that is. KPI metrics to identify, how well your team are doing, and holding them accountable is very, very important. So that's another tools and technique. Retrospectives, right? So if you guys are coming from an agile background, even from a waterfall model, right, you can apply this there as well. But especially from the agile, it's very important because you want to improve your mistakes from last sprints and then actually correct them in the following sprints. Key learning and how to improve and architecture reviews. These are some tools. So let's go to the next slide, please. So again, let's make sure we have that Kanban board. People are following those swim lanes. That's a tool that we've used for the daily Scrum. Let's skip that. I've already talked in depth about this one. Resource capacity model, right? So this is something that you can use a project plan, Microsoft project plan, if you're doing waterfall model. I've used that for many years. But when you come into the agile, the things are changing so fast, right? I mean, like I mentioned earlier, that one of my friends works for Bloomberg, and then he's following 1 day sprint cycle, right? So, and then if you are allocating something for a few resources, we follow 1 week sprint cycle, for example. So 5 days is a very short window. If anybody is sick or if anybody is working on something else, and you have planned something else for them, then you have a problem, right? So again, if they're at a holiday coming up, 4th of July and whatnot, then your sprint cycle would be impacted because the sprint cycle is so short. So you want to make sure that you use some tool, right, to make sure you know your capacity of your team, what will be delivered, when it will be delivered. And I recommend using something like, this is a homegrown resource capacity model where I have the on the left side, you start off with the sprint numbers, right? Sprint 46. Then you have quarter, which quarter are we talking about? The sprint start date, November 18th. So that's a week of the sprint development work and the QA work. Then the actual sprint delivery date, so November 26th would be the delivery date, for example. Now on this middle side, you can see there's an allocation, right? So what are the tasks you want to do in this week? So we would list down all the tasks, right? So you say, okay, Magento upgrade R&D, for example, DevOps, automation of test cases, whatever it is. Again, you want to document and you want to register every single thing that your resource will be working that week. I'm going to refer back to that the book. No, go back, please. I'm going to refer back to that book, The Phoenix Project. So one of the things, very good book, and talks about some of the scenarios. So if you do like a 2 hours task a day on a specific day, and you don't register, right? But again, your hours are allocated by 40 hours a week, for example, then your 2 hours are gone, and maybe 1 or 2 hours more later in the week, you may probably are doing something else. Now your 4 hours are gone, but you were allocated for 40 hours, for example, or maybe 36 hours, depending on the contingency, then it would have an impact. So as per, Gene, the guy who wrote that book, it says that you should document every single thing, even though it might be 2 hours short, small, right? So make sure document everything that your team will be working on as a task. I personally recommend that, and I follow that. And then you put down the names of the resources. One single task may be spread out for multiple resources. So for example, Magento upgrade R&D, right? So Paul is involved and Ryan, they both are involved in those tasks, right? So I would put down numbers for each resource in that specific task. This way, it would help me understand, okay, well, he's busy in these two tasks. These two guys are busy in this task. I cannot engage them in any other task. So it gives you a quick visibility and allocation of resources. You can go units by, you can change the unit by days. I love the hours because then you can see if there's a 4-hour work, then I can engage the resource in something else. Go to the next slide, please. In continuation of this one, this is where you can identify the resources availability. And so you can say, again, since I mentioned that there might be, it's because of the short week, you may have resources taking a day off, and it's going to impact your sprint cycle. So anybody who's taking time off, you want to highlight them in red. Anybody who's available, you want to highlight them in green. And then you can put the contingency, put a formula which basically auto computes this. So this is all done in Excel, but it's all auto calculated. All you have to do is go up, please. One more. Go back to one slide real quick. All you have to do is specify. No, back. One more. There we go. So all you have to do is put in the numbers, right, of resources who will be engaged in those tasks, and then go to the next slide. And this is on the right side, which says total available days versus remaining, actually it's hours. So you can see how many hours are remaining for each resources. Again, you can use any other tool that's available, but make sure you have something that manages your resources capacity on a weekly basis if you're doing a sprint cycle on a week basis, or if you are doing it maybe a bi-week, 2-week cycle. Next slide, please. Okay, so KPI we talked about, right? So we want to make sure that you are monitoring the KPIs and the velocity of your teams. The one way is actually making sure that you have a sprint velocity V. You can run the report if you're using a Jira. So Jira allows you to give you a quick review, a quick snapshot of how many sprints have gone in one quarter, for example. What was the velocity each sprint? I basically take that data from those reports and I expand it a little bit more. I can see the sprint velocity at sprint level, but I can see whether the available days were same or not, right? So if the number of days are less in one sprint, because we're doing 1 week sprint, because of 4th of July or whatever the holidays might be, or maybe resource is not available, then I can match those and then say, then I can see, yes, the sprint velocity on sprint 1 was 16, and 28 on the next one because the resources availability was higher or lower, right? Based on that, you can also find out how many stories and bugs they were resolved in a sprint, in each sprint, and how many bugs were actually created. So again, accountability is very important, right? And you can use something similar to what we are sharing here as a tool to identify the KPIs of your team members. And when you are predicting your next sprint, this would help you. My average is like 20 sprints, 20 story points every sprint. That's my velocity. Then again, when earlier I was talking about the grooming session, and if my capacity is becoming 50, then I know that I'm over 30 story points, and I need to discuss with the stakeholder and the product owner what needs to give in order to accommodate 20 story points for that sprint. Okay. So retrospectives, like I mentioned, in Agile, it's very important to learn from your mistakes, what you did in the last 2 or 3 or 4 sprints. I do it once a month. This way, I can collect all of the data. If you are immature in terms of your maturity cycle is less, maturity number is less as compared to other organizations, let's say, who are way mature and have a lot of processes already in place. You may want to probably do it, once a month, right? But if you are actually coming towards the maturity in terms of software development, then you may want to probably do it once a week. This way you can easily capture those issues, solve them real quick, and then gain productivity and plug those productivity leakages immediately. So have those retro done either once a week, or depending on your sprint cycle, or once a month. And again, learn from those mistakes. Do a graph saying, okay, well, these were the mistakes. Are bugs continue to increase or climb up? Are they declining? Give some visibility into those issues so you can understand. Go to the next slide, please. Architecture discussion, again, we basically identify all these major changes and then document them and make sure that, we follow through on those when we are making major changes to the architecture. So again, it's a fall under the cadence, as well as a review session of architecture when we are when you are making changes at architecture level, to make sure you do that as well.